Hello, and gracias. Today I want to speak about plant medicines and morphic fields and the ideal loop or cycle that one, in my opinion, experience should seek to go through to further enhance the effectiveness of the fields and by proxy and inextricably linked the efficacy of the plant medicine or animal medicine, psychedelics. And the reason why this even came to my awareness is because, for those of you who aren't aware, I don't plan what I'm going to speak about. I don't have a calendar marked out with topics. I don't plan out. It's God's plan. Trust in God. And trust was given to no who. And this is going to reference a lot of stuff I've talked about in the podcast about fields, emotions, and thoughts. So this may be repetitive, or I may reference that at times, depending on how I feel. So keep that in mind. When we interact with a field, a energy, a frequency, a very individual fractal of the universe, and thusly of God, the Most High, uncaused cause, the singularity. When we interact with any given frequency field, it is affecting our mind, body, spirit complex, but more specifically, it's affecting all of our energy bodies, from the most celestial and thusly of less substance or lower vibration, all the way down to our most dense and most fresh as well. Because much as, well, not much as, but more of a inverse parallel to how with trees, the smallest rings of the tree are indicating when it was younger. But then as it gets wider and larger in circumference and diameter, those new rings are outside. And you can see the life cycle of the tree by looking at those rings. The same thing holds true for everything, but more specifically the human and its aura. So the further you go out away from your physicality, again, the most dense, the most present form of those energy bodies, and you go outwards, you go into the past. And this isn't something that I'm just came to awareness from my own practice. Other shamans and sound healers have discovered this as well. And I've seen it. I've felt it, I've witnessed it many times within myself and with others. And you can feel this when using, my tuning fork's with me right now, but you can feel this when you're using a tuning fork on someone else, or even again yourself. You go closer to the heart chakra with the 639 hertz fork, and recent wounds, very present pains and hurts, come to consciousness again. Feeling, okay, I might feel some chest pain from this frequency because it's calibrating my heart chakra and it's currently off. Then, there's the case. So I got interacted by the energy, the field, the frequency. Then I have the emotion, I have the embodied sensation or experience within my physicality. and then I have the thought, the memory, or person, place, or thing with which I associate that pain and sensation, again, emotion. And that's the loop, right? And then again, by having, okay, so if I have that awareness, I go through the cycle once of experiencing the energy, experiencing it, feeling it, understanding it cognitively, or the association. Then I'm able to go back again with the energy, so let's say the fork, and I can adjust, in a variety of ways in relationship to what I just observed within myself, emotionally and mentally. I can go back at the target area with the fork with a different intention, with a different technique of how I'm doing it. Sometimes I feel like tuning forks is like picking locks. I'm not the best lock picker or locksmith, but I know a thing or two. And sometimes it feels like I'm just raking a lock when it comes to the forks, of just really, the same way like a snake has its rattle, of where I'm just going really frenetic. It looks weird, I get that. You see some dude just all of a sudden start shaking too for like he's spazzing out on cocaine or some shit, but I'm not. The emotion I might feel then from that shift in interacting with the energy, or how I apply the energy of frequency of 639 hertz, then might shift, right? Because again, I'm not just using this again. Why again? I'm gonna keep harping on this because I still keep getting asked the same fucking question. I do not write docs, and I do not explain the fields or subfields contained within my audios and mandalas, because how you apply the energy is so critical, right? 639 hertz applied to the heart chakra in a very aggressive, frenetic manner could remove the cord, or bring it back into harmony, or it can make it too sharp. There's times to push and there's times to pull. Whereas a more feminine, again, even the very act of raking, as much as penetration with a female, right? There's parallels there on many dimensions. Whereas the more feminine approach, going back to the heart chakra again, of like brushing the hair, of stroking or petting an animal, that nurturing flow, that might be more effective. And furthermore, again, as you go through every cycle of an interaction with the energy, so now I do that, let's just say I do the masculine first. I do the very frenetic picking technique, and I approach my heart chakra from the right side, over my heart at least, from the right side. And I feel, things loosen up, and I feel more relief in my chest. And as I feel more relief in my chest, I am now able to recall the event or the cause or whatever is currently coming to the conscious mind in terms of distilling what is going on down here in the body into thought form. I might be able to have more compassion for the situation or the other person, right? I might have achieved greater levels of forgiveness, again, between cord cutting, between bringing my heart chakra back into harmony, between restoring homeostasis on so many different levels. I'm now already two cycles in, and these cycles are happening at an infinite scale, on infinite dimensions, which is really cool to think about. But just now, a second later, the thought process already could have changed. And so now I see that I hurt this person. All right, so instead of going with aggressive masculine energy, more of this feminine. Okay, so we just need to be a more approachable person. We need to go now more into the yin, because again, the sun. Yeah, I know I talk a lot about the sun. I talk a lot about the masculine. I talk a lot about that. But I do still honor and very much love the feminine. Don't get it twisted. And a large part of my work is shadow work in nature, and it is feminine. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm black. The sensation after doing it in a more gentle capacity, more feminine, then already now the sensation in the chest is already much lighter. It's much more calm. And then the thoughts surrounding the other person or the event are now much more positive and loving and grateful. Which again comes back to why gracias, thank you, danke, thank you is my favorite prayer. Because it is currently, in my experience, the best way of transmuting everything. Don't get me wrong, like Ho'oponopono prayer is powerful, but I personally find that just gratitude, thank you, is far more effective and efficient overall. Well, there is more than one way to skin a cat. So, going back to the loop cycle. So that was with the tuning fork. If I go out into the woods, around power lines, around trees, around septic tanks, around houses, around scent markings, around scat, waste matter, dead animals, fur, there are a lot of different energies and fields interacting with me on many different cycles, just like that tuning fork one I illustrated on a very simple microcosmic scale. You step out into the woods and you're surrounded by very conscious beings. The plants, the trees, the fauna. And so all these exchanges of feeling, of experience, like their auras colliding with mine and vice versa as I move through the environment. That loop, that cycle field, emotion, thought is occurring very, very rapidly and very, very intensely, which again is also why nature is so healing. You're getting a counseling, shamanic, OODA loop group session with Mother Nature. It's a very feminine, restorative experience. For rest. So, with that out of the way, now I want to shift back to the psychedelics. So, psychedelics in their conjunction with fields, energies, etc., and why it makes everything so much more effective. Because by increasing your consciousness and awareness, and what I mean by that is, again, the brain crosstalk is happening, parts of the brain are talking to other parts of the brain that normally aren't speaking to each other. So we have novel, new, synapses being made and connecting dots that previously seemed completely disconnected and not connected at all. Neurogenesis, again, forming new pathways. So right there from just the neural component, you have a greater malleability, and thusly, since you have a greater malleability and less of a sense of ego, less of a filter. You're able to go through the iterations faster and finding higher levels of truth because just off that component alone. Because you're not holding on to things as much, you're just experiencing things as they are, and you're also then super conscious because you're aware now of how this one item of clothing doesn't feel nearly as good for you as another one. You're aware of, wow, that specific piece of food I ate earlier, I can feel it in my gut right now. And my body is going to be in a state of unrest until it is completely evacuated from my system. Or I just interacted with that person and they left a residue on my energy, my aura, and now I'm going through a cycle of purging or integrating different things from that interaction. But with the plant medicine, again, in combination with the fields, when people are using it with, and again, going back to the nature component or other things, like with psychedelics, I'm profoundly aware of all these such things happening at so many different layers at once. That could be a talk in and of its own. But I want to go back to the morphic fields of psychedelics. So with that increased awareness, again, mentally, just that factor alone is going to make you able to grow and learn with a field much quicker. Just drastically much quicker. But then we again look at the somatic aspect as well. That's also huge. Right, going back to the feeling things in your body, because especially with 5-MeO, with Bufo, the body load, I would say it's different than psilocybin and how it manifests, but some people do vomit and some people do purge in that capacity. But again, I've talked about this recently on the podcast, which is a reel on Instagram, of, part of what got me into tuning forks, the major catalyst, was when during my first Bufo ceremony in California, thank you, Susie, they played singing bowls and handpan while I was in the medicine, and I could feel in my physicality how the frequencies were healing me. I could feel it in my body. And again, I was aware, I was conscious, of what was going on too, of bringing them greater levels of coherence, harmony, and balance. And that was, it's very new. So again, with psychedelics, when you're using a field, a morphic field, and you're able to feel within your physicality different things changing, or again, if you're able to feel from Gaines Train that your arms are getting a pump, right? Because again, you're now more conscious, you are more aware, both neurally and physiologically, then you're going to be able to go through that cycle faster because now you're more conscious of what's going on. You've eradicated a level of disbelief, right? Because I get it. Like when you're new to fields, there's a lot of disbelief. There's a lot of you getting in your own way. And that's fine. Been there, done that. Something I still deal with, which is why I didn't start off making really intense fields, because I was like, well, let's see if I can even just create negentropic, Jing, Qi, and Shen. And I did. And it's still an absolute miracle, the mathematics of how the three treasures turned out. But anyways, the more conscious you can be, and this is why, again, active meditation with fields is always going to be the go-to practice for people who aren't getting results. Because again, they're not even aware, they're not even conscious of what's going on. So they're not able to even, feel the pins of the lock. They're not even able to observe other aspects of the mechanism at play, whether it be, I'm ungrounded from this field, right? If I just handed out zero entropy to a lot of people would fry themselves and then probably not come back to the field, and then also two, not understand why or what to do to rectify it, right? So that's also why things are different price points, is because you really shouldn't be playing with certain things unless you're ready for it. And I'm not going to write docs, I'm not going to write manuals. I am treating this very much like a firearms or weapons, a medicine slash armory, of where, you know, the 12-year-old out, a 12-year-old can afford a 22, realistically, or a BB gun, and within their current, you know, experience of reality and maturity, this is suitable, and also within their financial budget as well. Whereas the amount of men that can afford truly like a 50 BMG, like a suppressed full auto BMG, when we look at tax stamps and laws and all the hoops. I just heard today that you can apparently get suppressors in like under a week now, so that's cool. But from my current understanding of how tax stamp items work, like a full auto, you know, FFL machine gun, and then when you look at the 50 cal suppressed, all these different factors, that's going to take you some time. There's a lot of hoops and a lot of money that goes into that. So chances are too that person has been in the game a little longer. Again, just like a game of life. You know, you don't unlock Daedric weaponry and armor in Skyrim at level 1. You can't afford it. And also too, like, part of the journey is going into the different levels of things. I always tell people, you know, life wouldn't be fun if it wasn't for struggle or suffering. Embrace the suck. It's for you. It's for your evolution. Again, even God himself would not come here with unlimited guns, unlimited ammo, max money, max stats, because what's the fun and point in that? It's important that whenever you interact with a field or any sort of energy source, that you're able to cycle through that loop as quickly as possible. One of my coaching clients has been microdosing mushrooms for the past couple weeks, actually. And I've told her to continue to do so because I can see from the outside perspective looking in as her coach, it's very obvious to me to see the uphill direction she's going with making changes. And that's a microdose. So again, whether it's cannabis, whether it's mushrooms, LSD, bufo, ayahuasca, iboga, again, different ways of applying them, different ways of applying the fields. Again, you can use fields for the environment, you can use fields for energy, you can use fields for food, you can use fields for yourself, you can use fields as weapons, you can use fields for healing. Your imagination is limitation then. Onyx, which is at the very bottom of the store, only once did I ever use it in a weaponized capacity. I usually, 99% of the time, I'm just very intuitively using it for shielding a bubble. That's how I experience it and feel it, and furthermore interpret and interact with that energy. But once I applied it as a weapon, but even then, like, this didn't feel natural to me. You know? So this is again why I don't write freaking docs, because why would I want to even constrain or limit people's consciousness and mindset out the gate when interacting with all my tools? Yes, I'm aware it is probably bad for business. I'm fully aware of that. But the path is more narrow because the calling is higher.